The wind that swept across the coast of Barbados that morning carried the smell of salt, mystery, and fate. The waves crashed against the worn planks of a merchant ship anchored in the distance, while a young deckhand, barely more than a boy, mended the torn sails with hands marked by labor and dreams far bigger than his world allowed. His name was Elias, and though his life had been chained to the will of the sea, he had always felt that the ocean held a voice, one that whispered promises to those who dared to listen. Yet that day, the sea would speak louder than ever before. As the sun rose, painting the horizon in golden fire, a cry echoed from the cliffs. Elias turned just in time to see a child fall into the raging surf. Without hesitation, he dove into the water, slicing through the waves with a strength that came not from muscle, but from something deeper, the unspoken bond between man and ocean. The boy's pale hand reached up once before disappearing beneath the foam. Elias fought the current, lungs burning, heart pounding, refusing to let the sea claim another innocent soul. When he finally broke the surface with the child in his arms, the storm inside him was silenced by the miracle of breath returning to the boy's lips. That night, as the village slept and the tide crept over the sand, Elias returned to the shore where he had nearly lost his life. Something shimmered beneath the moonlight, half buried in the wet sand. He knelt and brushed away the grains to reveal a compass, golden and untarnished by the sea. But when he held it in his palm, the needle did not point north. It spun, slowly, until it settled toward the open horizon. And in that silent moment, Elias understood. The sea had given him not just a reward, but a path. From that night onward, the ocean no longer felt like an enemy or a force to endure. It became his guide. Whispers of destiny began to follow him. Sailors swore the compass could sense storms before they were born, and merchants offered fortunes to own it. Yet Elias refused to sell or surrender it, for he believed the compass had chosen him, not by chance, but by purpose. Every night, he would stare at its glimmering needle and wonder what horizon it sought to reveal. What Elias could not yet know was that this gift carried more than gold and glory. It carried the will of the deep itself. For in saving a life, he had unknowingly struck a bargain with the ocean's oldest spirit. And soon, the waves that once cradled him would rise again, not to drown, but to call him home. The days that followed the discovery of the golden compass marked a silent transformation in Elias. The sea, once vast and indifferent, now seemed to watch him, to breathe with him. At dawn, he would stand barefoot on the wet sand, holding the compass in his palm as the wind swirled around him like a whispering spirit. The needle no longer trembled. It pulsed, as though it shared a heartbeat with his own. Each morning it pointed toward a different horizon, and though he could not yet understand its meaning, he felt that every change was a call, an invitation from the deep to follow. Word of the boy with the sea's compass spread quickly through the taverns of Barbados. Sailors spoke of omens, merchants whispered of curses, and pirates, those men who lived by fate's cruel hand, grew curious. One evening, under a sky thick with clouds, a figure approached Elias at the dock. He was tall, cloaked in salt and shadow, with eyes that seemed carved by storms. "They say the ocean gave you gold," he murmured, "but the sea never gives without wanting something back." The man's name was Captain Morrow, a legend among pirates, both feared and admired. That night, destiny anchored itself beside Elias. Elias joined Morrow's crew the next morning, leaving behind the quiet life he'd known. As the ship, the Meridian, cut through the open waters, he felt the weight of both freedom and danger. The crew, rough men hardened by betrayal and blood, watched him with suspicion. Yet it was the compass they feared more than him. They said it glowed at night, pulsing faintly when storms brewed or when ships were near. And when it pointed toward uncharted waters, the captain ordered the sails turned without question, trusting the young deckhand's golden curse. Weeks passed before Elias realized the compass was leading them somewhere, not to treasure, but to something older. Strange phenomena began to haunt their voyage. Lights beneath the water, voices carried in the wind, and dreams shared among the crew. Men awoke at night screaming, claiming to see a woman of the waves, her hair made of foam, her eyes like pearls. Elias too began to dream of her. She called his name in the tongue of the sea, a melody that pulled him from sleep with tears in his eyes. And always, the compass glowed when he heard her voice. The ocean, once his home, had become a living riddle. The crew's fear grew as the compass began pointing toward a storm that refused to move, a vortex of black clouds circling the same patch of horizon night after night. Captain Morrow ordered the ship toward it, his greed overpowering reason. Elias tried to protest, but the captain's laughter drowned his voice. "The sea doesn't scare men who've already been claimed by it," Morrow said. And as thunder broke across the sky, Elias felt the compass burn in his hand, as though it too feared what awaited them in the dark. The storm hit like the roar of a vengeful god. Waves as high as cathedrals smashed against the meridian, tossing men into the night like broken shells. Lightning carved open the heavens, revealing glimpses of terror. Faces frozen in fear, ropes snapping, masts splitting apart. Elias clung to the deck, his hand wrapped around the compass that now blazed with light. In that chaos, he heard her voice again, soft, calm, almost loving. "Do not fear the sea," it whispered. "Fear what lies beneath those who deny it." The storm lasted 3 days and 3 nights, though none could tell where time began or ended. When dawn finally came, the world was quiet. The sea lay like glass, and the meridian floated on its mirrored surface, half her crew gone, her sails torn. But the compass still glowed, steady as a heartbeat. Elias, weak and trembling, followed its direction once more. There, beyond the mist, he saw something impossible, an island not marked on any map, its cliffs glinting like wet obsidian. Captain Morrow's eyes widened with greed. "There lies our fortune," he said. But Elias could feel it in his bones. That was not treasure, that was judgment. As they approached, the air thickened, and the waves began to hum, low, resonant, alive. The crew whispered prayers, for every man knew the old legends, islands that appeared only to those who'd been chosen by the sea. They spoke of the Isle of Echoes, where the ocean stored the memories of every soul it had ever taken. No one who landed there returned unchanged. Yet the captain pressed on, and Elias, though filled with dread, felt the compass pulse with approval. The boy who once saved a drowning child was now sailing into the very heart of the deep secrets. When they dropped anchor, silence fell. The sand shimmered black as oil, and the wind carried faint voices, echoes of the lost, whispering from nowhere and everywhere at once. The men disembarked cautiously, swords drawn, but there was no life, no movement. Only stones shaped like faces, worn smooth by centuries of tide. Elias knelt beside one and felt warmth radiating from it, as if the stone itself were breathing. The compass needle trembled violently, pointing toward a cave at the base of the cliffs. It was there, he knew, that the sea's promise awaited. Captain Morrow led them inside, torches flickering against walls lined with strange symbols. Maps, names, storms, all carved in spirals. The air grew colder with every step, and at the cave's heart stood a pool of still water, glowing faintly blue. Elias stepped forward, compelled by a pull stronger than fear. The compass left his hand, floating above the water like a dying star. And as its light dimmed, a voice rose from the depths, the same voice that had called him in dreams. "Elias," it said, "you returned what the sea had lost. Now, the sea will return what humanity has forgotten." The voice filled the cave like the tide itself, ancient, patient, immeasurable. Every man froze, staring at the water as if it breathed. The surface rippled, and from its depths rose the faint silhouette of a woman woven from light and foam. Her eyes reflected the stars of the world above, and her voice carried both mercy and warning. "The compass was not forged by gold or man," she said. "It was born from the heart of the sea, to guide the one who would restore balance between the living and the drowned." Her gaze fell upon Elias. "And you, child of breath and salt, were chosen when you gave life to one the sea had claimed." Elias stepped back, heart pounding. Chosen for what? He asked, though part of him already knew. The woman's form wavered, her voice softening to a whisper. "To deliver what men stole from the ocean." The sea remembers every betrayal, every ship that broke its oath, every soul that defied its will. Her gaze shifted toward Captain Morrow, whose face had turned pale beneath his sunburned skin. "You," she said, her tone deepening into thunder, "carry the weight of many." Morrow scoffed, though his voice shook. "I've only taken what was mine to take." The cave trembled, as if the sea itself disagreed. The water surged, and ghostly forms began to emerge from the pool. Sailors, merchants, even pirates, their faces pale as the moon. The lost souls of the sea surrounded them, whispering the names of ships swallowed long ago. Morrow drew his cutlass, striking at the air, but the blade passed through the spirits like mist. The men screamed, torches falling, shadows flickering wildly against the walls. Through the chaos, Elias stood unmoving. The compass had returned to his palm, glowing with unbearable light. And suddenly, he understood it was not pointing toward treasure, but toward truth. He turned to Morrow, his voice breaking through the storm of whispers. "The sea doesn't want gold. It wants peace." The captain snarled. "Peace. The sea devours men without mercy." Elias raised the compass, the glow now pulsing like a heartbeat, only because men stopped listening to it. Then the light exploded, flooding the cave with brilliance. The spirits cried out, not in pain, but release, before dissolving into streams of light that poured back into the pool. The compass dimmed, and silence fell once more. When the men opened their eyes, the woman of the sea was gone. In her place, the water lay still and black, reflecting their faces with eerie clarity. Elias looked down and saw not his reflection, but the horizon, endless, golden, calling. Captain Morrow dropped his sword, his arrogance stripped away. "What have you done, boy?" he whispered. Elias looked at the compass, now calm and ordinary in his palm. "I listened." The crew returned to the meridian in silence. None spoke of what they had witnessed, but every man's gaze held the same haunted awe. The storm that had once raged above the island had vanished, replaced by a sea as calm as glass. Yet the calm felt different, alive, aware. Elias stood at the bow, the compass heavy in his hand. Its needle no longer spun wildly. It rested, steady, pointing toward the west. But something in him knew that this journey was far from over. Days passed, and the ocean carried them with an unnatural gentleness. The men began to dream again, not of fear, but of peace. One dream, shared among them all, told of ships made of light sailing beneath the surface, guiding them home. Yet Captain Morrow's rest remained broken. He would wake in cold sweat, clutching his chest, haunted by the faces of those he had condemned. "The sea watches me," he whispered to Elias one night. "It forgave you, but it waits for me." Elias said nothing. Some debts could not be repaid in gold or tears. On the seventh day, the horizon began to glow faintly, though the sun had not yet risen. The light grew stronger as they sailed, until the entire crew gathered at the bow in awe. Before them stretched an expanse of golden mist, the same hue as the compass's glow. The wind carried the faint sound of bells, though no ships were near. Elias lifted the compass, and the needle quivered, pointing directly into the light. "That's where she wants us to go," he said softly. Morrow frowned. "Or where she wants us to end." They entered the mist, and the world around them changed. The air shimmered with heat and memory. They saw flashes, not visions but echoes, of ships long gone, of men once lost. Each soul seemed to drift peacefully now, their curses lifted, their burdens set down. Elias felt tears burn his eyes as he realized what the sea had given him. Not fortune, but understanding. The ocean did not crave worship or fear. It only wanted remembrance. To be seen not as a beast, but as a living force, ancient and eternal. As the mist thinned, they found themselves in open waters once again, but something had shifted. The sea beneath them gleamed as if lined with liquid gold, and the compass's light faded to a warm, steady glow. Morrow turned to Elias with weary eyes. "What now, boy?" Elias smiled faintly. "Now, we sail where the sea leads, not where greed does." The captain let out a hollow laugh. "A pirate without greed? You'll be the first." Elias looked toward the horizon, his voice soft but resolute. Then I'll be the last to. For weeks, the meridian drifted across a sea that no map dared to name. The stars above seemed brighter than ever before, as though the heavens themselves were guiding their path. The men had changed. Rough laughter no longer filled the nights, and the sound of dice and curses was replaced by quiet songs and the creak of wood over gentle tides. Something sacred had entered them, something that neither hunger nor fear could erase. And at the center of it all was Elias, standing at the bow each dawn, compass in hand, waiting for its next whisper. The crew began to call him the sea's chosen, half in reverence, half in fear. They believed the compass no longer served man, but judged him. When two sailors fought over stolen rum one night, the needle began to spin violently until the men dropped to their knees, trembling. Elias did not speak a word. He merely placed his hand over the compass, and it stilled. "The ocean has already forgiven you," he said. "Don't make it regret it." Those words became legend among them, and for the first time in their lives, pirates began to obey something greater than their captain, a quiet, unseen order born of the deep. But Captain Morrow was not so easily tamed. Each sunrise seemed to etch another line of defiance across his weathered face. The visions that haunted him refused to fade. He would wake screaming, claiming he saw drowned men walking the decks at night. "You brought their ghosts aboard," he spat at Elias one evening. "You think the sea loves you, boy? It's only waiting to take you too." Elias met his gaze calmly. "If it wanted me dead, I would never have risen from its waters." Morrow turned away, though the tremor in his hand betrayed his rage, or perhaps his guilt. The compass began to act strangely again. Its light dimmed, then flared, as if struggling to breathe. The needle turned not toward the horizon, but downward, into the depths. Elias felt a chill that had nothing to do with the wind. "It's calling us below," he murmured. The crew murmured in disbelief, crossing themselves, whispering prayers. But Elias could not look away. He felt that the sea was asking something of him, one final act of faith. "We have followed her across storms and silence," he said. "Now we must go where no sail can reach." Captain Morrow laughed, a hollow, broken sound. "You've lost your mind, boy. The sea's whisper has turned you mad." But even as he spoke, the waves began to churn, and the ship's lanterns flickered out. Beneath them, the ocean glowed with soft gold, illuminating vast shapes moving far below. The men fell silent. Elias turned, his voice trembling not from fear, but awe. "She's waiting." At dawn, the sea split open. Not violently, not like storm or quake, but gently, as if parting for something sacred. The water formed a wide spiral, revealing a shimmering vortex beneath. The golden light pulsed in rhythm with the compass's faint glow. Elias stepped forward, feeling the pull deep in his chest. "We were never meant to conquer the sea," he whispered, "only to return what was taken." He turned to Morrow. "This is your chance to make peace." But the captain shook his head, madness burning behind his eyes. "Peace is for the weak. The sea owes me, for every man it swallowed, every coin it took." He drew his cutlass, pointing it toward Elias. "You would throw away what could make us gods." The crew backed away, torn between fear and loyalty. Elias didn't flinch. "The sea doesn't create gods," he said quietly. "It humbles them." Morrow lunged, but before steel met flesh, a roar split the air. A wave rose behind them, towering higher than the masts. The compass ignited in Elias's hand, casting blinding light across the deck. The wave didn't crash. It shaped itself into form, the same woman of foam and storm, her eyes full of grief. "You were warned," she said, her voice trembling like thunder trapped in sorrow. Morrow froze, his blade trembling. "No," he whispered, "not again." The wave collapsed, engulfing him in an instant. When it withdrew, only his hat remained, floating on the deck like a broken crown. The crew stood in silence, heads bowed, the weight of their sins pressing down like a storm they could never outrun. Elias stared at the compass, now pulsing softly, as if mourning too. The sea had taken what it was owed. Then, without command, the ship began to move, slowly, gracefully, toward the glowing vortex below. Elias turned to the crew. "No one will be lost today," he said. "Only returned." They nodded, tears glistening like salt on their cheeks. One by one, they dropped to their knees, not in fear but in faith. As the meridian descended into the golden depths, the world above began to fade, replaced by light, warmth, and the echo of a heartbeat. The same heartbeat that had always guided them. Silence wrapped the world as the meridian sank beneath the golden surface. Yet there was no fear, no rush of drowning or burning of lungs. Only weightlessness, as if time itself had loosened its grip. The crew opened their eyes and found themselves breathing water that shimmered like light. Around them, the sea glowed with a life unseen by human eyes. Towers of coral that pulsed like veins, whales that sang in tones of sorrow and peace, and ruins of ships that drifted not as wrecks, but as monuments. The ocean had become a cathedral, and every stone, every current, was a hymn to eternity. Elias stood at the helm, the compass hovering before him, its glow reflecting on his face like a halo. "She's showing us the truth," he said softly, his voice barely more than a thought carried through the water. The crew watched in awe as they drifted past ghostly fleets. Thousands of ships, from ancient galleons to forgotten caravels, all resting in harmony. Their sails were made of light, and their anchors gleamed like stars. It was not a graveyard. It was a kingdom. The sea had not devoured them. It had kept them, preserved, remembered. Then the compass shifted, its light turning from gold to deep blue. It pulsed once, twice, and began to drift forward, guiding them toward the deepest point. As they followed, the waters grew darker, colder, until a faint shape appeared ahead, a massive structure carved from coral and bone, rising like a palace from the abyss. Upon its walls were etched the names of countless souls, their letters glowing softly, endless as the sea itself. The compass floated toward the gates, and the ocean seemed to hold its breath. Elias stepped forward, his heart pounding in reverence. "This is where the sea keeps its memories," he murmured. "Every life it took, every promise broken." The gates opened, and a surge of light enveloped them. Inside was a vast chamber filled with floating orbs of water, each containing visions of lives once lived, sailors, mothers, children, all caught between storm and silence. The crew watched in silent awe as their own reflections appeared among them. "We're part of it now," whispered one of the men. "The sea remembers us too." At the center of the chamber, resting upon a pedestal of coral, was an object half buried in light. Another compass, older and cracked, its needle frozen still. Elias approached it, and as he did, the golden one in his hand began to tremble. The two compasses called to each other like old souls reunited after centuries apart. "There were others before me," Elias said, understanding at last. "Others who were chosen, others who listened." And in that moment, the voice of the sea returned, no longer a whisper, but a choir. "Every age has its listener. You're not the first, but perhaps you are the one who will stay." The sea's words vibrated through the chamber, resonating with a depth that shook both body and soul. Elias fell to his knees, overwhelmed. The golden compass hovered before him, spinning faster and faster until it burst into light, merging with the cracked one on the pedestal. When the brilliance faded, only a single compass remained, neither old nor new, but whole. Its needle pointed downward, pulsing like a living heart. The message was clear. The ocean's final secret lay below, even this sacred place. The crew hesitated, their courage faltering. "We've come far enough," one whispered. "We've seen what no man should." But Elias shook his head, calm and resolute. "If the sea trusted me with its voice, I must listen to its last word." He reached for the compass, and, as his fingers brushed its surface, the entire chamber shifted. The coral walls dissolved into currents, the lights dimmed, and suddenly, they were falling, not into darkness, but into memory. They saw flashes, storms of centuries past, the first ships that dared to cross the horizon, the first betrayal of the sea by human greed. They witnessed empires rise and fall, all bound by the same current of desire. The ocean had been both cradle and grave, giving life and taking it, never out of hatred, but balance. And through it all, a single truth echoed. Those who respect the sea live within its grace. Those who defy it live in its debt. When the vision faded, They found themselves at the deepest point, a vast trench glowing faintly with blue fire. In its center rested a sphere of pure light, pulsing like the heart of the world. The compass in Elias's hand glowed to match it, and he understood what the sea had been guiding him toward all along. Its heart, its soul. The place where every current began and every storm was born. "It doesn't want us to take it," he whispered. "It wants us to understand it." Elias placed the compass upon the glowing core, and the light surged upward, flooding the abyss. The entire ocean trembled, not with fury, but awakening. The coral palaces, the sunken ships, the spirits of the drowned, all rose in a dance of release. For the first time since the beginning, the sea breathed freely, unbound by grief or rage. The crew wept as they felt it, not as men at sea, but as part of it. And in that eternal stillness, Elias heard the voice one last time. "You have returned what was taken. Now, take what was always yours, peace." The light spread upward like dawn breaking through centuries of night. The meridian, once lost to the world above, began to rise with the golden current, carried by a force that felt neither physical nor divine, but something older, something true. The men clung to the railings, their eyes wide as the glow reflected off their faces. The sea, which had swallowed entire empires, now lifted them in its hands like children forgiven after lifetimes of silence. Elias stood at the bow, drenched in radiance, the compass gone. Yet somehow, he felt it beating within his chest. When they breached the surface, the sky was ablaze with light. No storm clouds, no wind. Only the calm, endless blue stretching to every horizon. The ship floated effortlessly, her torn sails now whole, her timbers shining as if newly built. The crew looked around in disbelief. Every scar of the journey, every wound, every crack, had vanished. "We're back," one of them whispered. "But where is here?" Elias breathed deeply, the scent of salt and sunlight filling his lungs. Somewhere between what was and what's meant to be. Days passed, though the sun never seemed to move. The sea shimmered like glass, reflecting a world that felt reborn. Dolphins followed their wake, and the stars at night burned with unfamiliar constellations. None of them hungered, none grew tired. It was as if the ocean itself had taken them under its protection, a final gift for those who had listened. And yet, Elias knew peace was not meant to last forever. "Every tide must turn," he murmured to the wind. "Even the sea rests before it moves again." On the fifth night, a new sound drifted across the waters, a melody, faint and sorrowful, played on some unseen instrument. The men gathered at the deck's edge, searching for its source. Then they saw her, the woman of the sea, standing upon the waves as if they were marble. Her form shimmered between mist and moonlight. She spoke not with words, but with presence. Every heart on the ship understood. She thanked them. She forgave them. And she blessed them with what the sea gives only to those who've earned its grace: remembrance. Elias stepped forward, his eyes meeting hers for the last time. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. Her smile was tender, eternal. "The sea forgets nothing, but it forgives what remembers." With that, she turned to the horizon and dissolved into foam, her voice echoing across the calm waters like the breath of the tide. The men stood in silence, the world holding its breath with them. And though the night returned, it was a night full of light. The dawn that followed felt unlike any before. The horizon gleamed gold, and the sea reflected it like liquid sunrise. The meridian drifted freely, its sails filled not with wind, but with purpose. Elias watched as the crew, men who had once lived by greed, fear, and blood, now stood together in quiet awe, transformed by something greater than redemption. They had not found treasure, nor fame, nor the glory of legends. They had found peace, and that was rarer than gold. In the distance, shapes began to form. The familiar outline of Barbados, though softer, more distant, like a memory seen through glass. The men cheered, but Elias remained still. The compass's absence weighed heavy, though he knew it had never truly left him. It had become part of his pulse, part of his will. "The sea gave me a map without borders," he said softly, "and I've followed it home." But as he looked closer, he realized something profound. This was not the same shore he'd left. The land was unchanged, but he was not. As they docked, the people of the port stared in disbelief. The ship they'd thought lost months ago had returned untouched, glowing faintly under the morning sun. Children ran to the pier, old sailors crossed themselves, and merchants dropped their goods in astonishment. Elias stepped onto the dock barefoot, feeling the solid earth beneath him for the first time in what felt like lifetimes. Yet his gaze stayed fixed on the horizon, where the sea glimmered with promise, like an old friend smiling farewell. The crew dispersed one by one, returning to the world that had forgotten them, leaving behind whispers of story too strange to be believed. Some said they'd seen heaven beneath the waves. Others said they'd sailed beyond time itself. But Elias never spoke of what truly happened. He simply returned to the shore each morning, listening to the rhythm of the tide, waiting for a whisper only he could hear. And on nights when the moon hung low and the air smelled of salt and memory, fishermen swore they saw him standing on the cliffs, holding something that glimmered faintly in the dark. A compass, old and golden, its needle still turning toward the heart of the sea. They said he never aged, never left, and that the ocean itself called him by name. For Elias had not been just a sailor. He had been the bridge between man and the sea, and the tide never forgot him again. The ocean has always spoken in ways most men never learn to hear. It doesn't use words. It teaches through loss, through beauty, through silence. Elias's journey wasn't one of conquest, but of listening. In saving a single life, he awoke the voice of the sea itself, and through storms, temptation, and the weight of eternity, he learned what no map or compass could ever reveal. That balance, not power, is the ocean's true treasure. His voyage reminds us that some forces are not meant to be owned, only understood. And when we learn to respect them, they give us more than gold. They give us peace. Every choice Elias made was guided not by ambition, but by instinct, a calling buried deep within every soul that longs for meaning beyond survival. He faced the same storms that live in all of us: greed, doubt, pride, and the quiet ache for redemption. Yet, through surrender, he found something greater than control: harmony. The sea didn't change for him. He changed for the sea. And perhaps that's the essence of every true transformation. Not bending the world to our will, but allowing its vastness to reshape who we are. When the Meridian returned, it wasn't just a ship resurfacing from the depths. It was a symbol. It carried back men reborn, stripped of arrogance, rich in understanding. It carried proof that the ocean doesn't destroy, it cleanses. That storms aren't curses, but mirrors reflecting what we refuse to see in ourselves. And just like Elias, every one of us sails through waters we can't control, holding on to compasses we barely understand, hoping that what we lose along the way will one day lead us home. So when you look at the horizon, when you hear the wind move over the water, remember this story. Remember that there's a tide within each of us, wild, relentless, beautiful, waiting to be heard. The sea may test us, may break us, but it never does so without purpose. The lesson is simple yet eternal. The same waves that take can also return, if we learn to listen. Elias didn't conquer the ocean. He became part of its song. And maybe, deep down, that's all any of us are meant to do. If this story moved you, if it made you feel the pull of the tide, or reminded you of your own storms and awakenings, let's stay with you. Share it. Tell others what the sea whispered to you tonight. And before you drift away, remember to leave your mark here. Subscribe, like, and tell us in the comments what the ocean means to you. Because every story, like every wave, returns to those who dare to listen.